lovely Little Pine State Park again. Apparently, the way I remember this event was 2 years ago when it first started, the very first one. It was 70 degrees in perfect conditions. That's why this one didn't seem the same, and I was ridiculously slow.
It was the perfect shot of Motley Crue, the dirtiest, the naughtiest band of the 80s, God bless them.
In a tub.
In the tub, I don't know what they were doing under the bubbles, but there they were.
How do you think music is, maybe not so much music, but a lot of the people that you've shot and are associated with, Bowie, early Pink Floyd, Genesis, and the theatrics involved with the stage presentation, with the music, how has that changed? I mean, certainly technology, you're capable of bigger, better, wilder, but I'm too young to have seen Genesis, but I can only imagine.
So how young are you?
3. You want to know? I was a little small to be getting into the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour. But,
okay.
Yeah, but I mean, how has it changed? Because, you know,
well,
Gabriel was making slides by himself and, you know, costumes and...
Well, I mean, when in '76 I toured, Lou Reed was the first one. We had 60 TV sets. It was the Rock and Roll Heart Tour, and no one had ever seen anything like it. The problem was, at every venue, we lost a couple of TVs, and then we had to go out and find them in some store the day of the actual performance. There was obviously, and David, but you remember that people think David as Ziggy Stardust, most of that theatricality was him, the way he dressed, the way he would project, the makeup, the hair, I mean, and, you know, of course he looked extraordinary, because he did look like, once he shaved the eyebrows, he looked like he just landed, which was, you know, worked very well with people's idea of him. But it wasn't only one time with Lindsay Kemp, who's my mentor, before he came over on his first American tour, before we came over on his first American tour. You know, most of the time I'm told, oh, that camera is part of this.
You can, absolutely.
Okay.
You can talk to whichever one you want.
Yes, there happened to be, but of course Lou, in the Day of Transformer, there was nothing there going on. Iggy, the Day of Raw Power. But it did gather steam. And of course Peter, I have these great pictures of Peter Gabriel, taken in 1973, so it was a couple of years ago. But he's got this fucking stocking on his head, and he's got a bow around his neck. And many years later he said, you know, even though I did a couple of live shoots, even though we never actually did another session, I remember him saying to me, you know, those are my all-time favourite pictures. I mean, of course they would be of him, looking totally whacked out, you know.
Which he's still...
God bless, yeah, amazing.
Well, I'm a little disappointed. Happy Acres does not give free breakfast to the trail runners anymore on Sunday. Instead, they give food on Friday and Saturday night, which half the people probably aren't even here on Friday night, because I was driving on Friday night and Saturday night. The 100-mile people would not be here, and I wasn't really here because I was one of the last ones to finish the 30 miles, so I'm very disappointed in that. And there were no coupons for anything in our bags. I'm gonna see what that is, because we got free ice cream at the one place last year, so it just seems like they're screwing us in every conceivable way.
He's a very, I remember meeting him with Lou a few years ago, and he was still the same. I mean, his amazing success just sort of, it was nothing to do with his ego. He always had that well under control, it seems to me. He was just able to let his imagination cut loose more and more. And as much as I like the Genesis work, I have to tell you, I probably prefer Peter's solo work. Without Genesis, there couldn't have been a solo career, but I liked what Genesis were doing. But once he kicked into his solo thing, that's when I went, he stretched the boundaries a bit more.
You mentioned ego and Gabriel a little. Do you think that part of your
I'm sure his ego was quite big, but he was, unlike Donald Trump, he didn't want to assault the world with it.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think that part of your job description is learning how to work with egos, clashes?
I never, you know what? It may be. I never really thought about it. I just went in, and to me they were artists. So there was an interesting. You got to remember how young I was when I started. Didn't have many reference points, and the people I were hanging around with were psychedelic loonies anyway. So I just totally accepted it. I mean, I think the reason why in that early period, you know, probably up to the mid-80s, when I would spend, I mean, I've got whole collection of great Joan Jett pictures. Mostly people know the I Love Rock and Roll shot, but I've got tons of others from around that, over that 2-year period, in all kinds of recording, hanging about backstage, whatever. Certain people, Thin Lizzy is the same. I mean, I'm mentioning these because people don't often associate that with me. But obviously David and Lou and Iggy and Queen, what's that?
Phil had such a short career.
Phil
Lynott.
What?
Phil Lynott.
Well, it wasn't that.
Here comes the 100-mile person following. Look at me. It's 10 o'clock. I think it's August 15th. 2016. This is day 2 of the Eastern States 100. I finished my race yesterday, the Wilds Mountain Marathon. I haven't seen one person come in. I don't think I'm going to stay around much longer. Paddle my boat around this little lake here at Little Pine State Park. I was here a few years ago, but I can't remember if I got any pictures, and I know I didn't get any videos. I saw 2 100-mile runners come in. It's probably about the extent of what I saw 2 years ago. When I get done, I'll see if anyone else is still coming in. after the race I did yesterday. I felt okay after Laurel Highlands. Maybe it was because I was going to Clarion North Country Trails for a kayak trip. I just don't feel like I could really figure out what to do. I might try to make myself ride on the bike trail here. I mean, it's a beautiful bike trail. It's just I was hoping I'd figure out something different, but yeah, maybe that'll be the thing to do. fishies in there. Oh, little fishies. Images. bird over there. Another 100-mile racers coming in here at Little Pine State Park. There's this nice bird not far away. This right here is one of the newest invasive species, I guess, to get into Pine Creek and Little Pine Creek. It's called rock snot. It's kind of like the consistency of a hard jellyfish, but I guess it's some kind of algae. And FYI, this rock snot's also in the Kayaking River and a few other rivers in the state of Pennsylvania. on. Woo! Oh, that's 2 people. Oh my gosh. Woo! 31 hours and 5 minutes for that guy. There's this other person. Oh, that was his pacer, I guess. Woo! Oh yeah, there's some other people coming. Nice. A lot of people coming through now. 31:38. They've been on all night and yesterday's it's crazy. Woo! 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 There's another guy here. I want himself really high. Woo! Woo! Interesting movie. So kind of backtracking. The 100-mile people finished the same place that the 50K, not even 50K, the 27-mile people finished. That 27-mile mountain marathon was so much harder than any 50K I've ever done. It was, I forgot how hard it was, and I think it was a lot to do with the heat. I just can't imagine how these guys do 100 miles like this. You want to actually come on the ones here. Woo! 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 Okay, that person's coming in. I'll go over and check this Eagle Watch thing, and then I think we'll head out of here. I did see the eagle earlier today.
be an Irishman, to really, and especially a black Irishman, to really get it over.
Sorry, you're good. You're good.
Did I?
We'll just nope. You're good.
Oh, it slipped out of my arsehole. Sorry. But to me they were artists, and then they became friends, and I would. I'd be hanging about anywhere, and nobody thought about the implications of the photograph. That's why I have stuff that people will never see, because they were never really intended to be published. They were just part of the fun of the moment, and nobody, I mean, who knew this fucking internet shit, and you would come along, you know? I mean, and now, and this, it's like a greedy, fucking huge, greedy machine. And as much as it does want a little bit of chatter and sound and music, what it's primarily geared to is the visual world. And that, in certain ways, I suppose, is been good for us, shall we say, more mature photographers, because our work is more appreciated nowadays than it was at the time. And for the young ones, I don't know if they're making money or not, but at least one thing, we would take pictures and you'd get a few dollars here and there, but it was enough to survive on. But and of course there was plenty of, there was side, where you get, somebody else's leftovers, shall I put it like that? Actually, not always like that. I can remember certain people who are into, shall we say, how shall we put it, not so dazzlingly attractive women. They kind of would, because there was more of a kink to that, So obviously if you want to have some kind of organic relationship with a beautiful young lady, but some of the other ladies deserved a bit of servicing too, and I could tell you a couple of very famous people who would trot out, and even one in particular I knew, and I can't go there because it's too exciting, is this woman, and I would see in very late night clubs, and she told me about, I met her, and she had two missing front teeth. Well, maybe there was whatever. Maybe that added to a certain thing that I'm not going to go into right now because it might be too vulgar. Now, I'm not really. Most of the time, I'm not on this camera. Most of the time, you are.
Most of the time, you're on this one. Do you often get younger photographers who are new to the business that ask you, "How do I do it?" That want to know how to do it?
Take it out and stick it in. I mean, what's your problem, not mine?
Well, but seriously, I think a lot of the questions that people tend to, or maybe I should say rants that people do online on the internet in terms of photographers and business goes, there was a big deal a couple weeks ago with Taylor Swift, and people were just insulted by what she had in her contract, and of course, she's the poster girl for I won't do anything with Apple. And,
yeah. She got smart very young, I have to tell you that.
Sure.
Even though people may not like it, I go, well, I've seen what's gone on in this game. I go, you've had some very sharp advice, and in a way, I mean, what do I care? If I'm going to shoot Taylor Swift, it's going to be strictly by invitation. It'll be a one-on-one. It'll be in a setup. I'm not a paparazzi. I don't shoot live stuff. It doesn't. And with all due respect to Taylor, as valuable as those pictures might have, it will be nothing compared to the value of my over 5,000 pictures of David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust. So I don't think like that anymore. If I think about it, I think about galleries, and if a magazine wants me to shoot something, that's great. But I'm just more concerned about galleries.
Well, what you do is so unique, though, and I think that's a dying breed of music photographers, unfortunately. Someone who has a personal relationship with people who can get backstage, you're having lunch here, and we didn't even...
No, I actually wasn't eating a fucking thing.
Really?
No, these two were eating.
That's the feeling that I have, is that you're in the picture.
It's a great picture in my new co-signed David Bowie book. It's being done by Tashian Books with a lenticular cover.
Nice one.
And the other picture, a picture taken a second later, of David scooping some food into his mouth, is in the book. I don't think I've ever published that.
Same.
Oh, it's right. It would have been a second later, but it was just David. Yeah, I mean, it was. I think a lot of those people in those days. One was you became, and this is true not just of me. It's true of my friend Bob Gruen. It's true of Henry Dills. It's true of a bunch of photographers. And you got to know, because you're in this little cesspool, and it's not that big. And the thing never, this is, you're talking about still the 70s, and things hadn't blown up to the degree, and the stadiums and even the sales, were not, yes, of course they were very good, but it wasn't, it became, a lot more. And I think maybe at times because I looked like them and the name Mick Rock, and I wasn't a pushy photographer. I wasn't you know, a little bit of a puff in my own way when I was younger, and I was not an aggressive photographer. It wasn't, you know, I couldn't fucking hell, but I mean, it didn't have to.
Get the front row and, yeah.
No, I don't. It doesn't. Hey, I have friends who paparazzi. God bless them. I take my hat off them. And look what Ron Gillelan's done. Now he's in museums all over the world.
And has
you know.
Film and
yeah, I mean, he's a fucking loony old geezer now.
You ever met Ron?
But God bless him. I mean, he does as much as Jackie Onassis for a long time. I mean, he does. And of course, it's Jackie Onassis.
Right.
You know, it's not. Oh, I should say Jackie Kennedy, which is how I prefer to think of her. That are extraordinary, and people do want to see. But back in those days, I mean, Marlon Brando like attacked him with a fucking baseball bat or something, and he survived. So I mean, I could never have had the balls to do. If you didn't, I'm much more delicate. If you didn't want me to photograph you, then I didn't care about it. It was not. I wanted you to love the pictures, and they all knew this. And I didn't want to offend. It wasn't like that. It wasn't coming from that. To me, these guys were like Baudelaire, Rimbaud, you know, Shelley, Keats, Coleridge, the Beats. That's because this was my education. So that I saw them in that light. So I had a huge respect for their talent going in, whether they were well known or they weren't. I could see what I saw and love what I loved. And so I really came at it from. I didn't come at it in any other way, and I think they knew that, and of course I have been respectful because I love these people, and I feel I'm a sort of image guardian, but that's why they have, even Sid Barrett co-signed some books from a limited edition, but Queen came to the table,
trust, yeah.
Lou Reed came to the table, Iggy's come to the table, although we haven't yet done our limited edition book, but we've done a couple of Raw Power books, and of course David has come twice to the table, and God bless David Bowie. He's been very it never makes, believe me, David is a very nice, kind man. He will not make a fuss about it. He doesn't want his name associated. He's a gentleman of true class. David Bowie, I mean, a lot of people are. I mean, Iggy's a great guy. I love Lou. I mean, Freddie would, but there's David, and of course he's raised the game to a whole other level. I mean, I don't know how to put it because I'm not taking the piss out of David ever at all. But when people ask me about him, I say I don't know. We have an email relationship nowadays, and if I inquire, he says he's fine. But I call it his Greta Garbo period, which is, you know, John Lennon had a Greta Garbo period too. So, but I think it's very appropriate with David, because he was not only a very bizarre-looking character when he was younger, but he was also a beautiful man. I mean, and I've got some images of Ziggy Stardust. If I was a scream, I'd be like backing off and whacking off. He looked so beautiful. But God bless David.
Can I ask you really?
Anyway, you know, my level of respect is through the roof for these people, and especially people like David and Lou and Iggy and Sid Barrett, which is really in many ways the way David and I first connected, because he knew Sid was a friend of mine. And of course, he brought Iggy and Lou to the table, which excited me, even though they were very subterranean and could barely give away records in those days. But David did a rescue job on it, and he did a brilliant one. And I think a lot of people owe David he had a certain like mummy thing about him. I mean, he actually cared about people, and he showed it in his own quiet way. He never, and I suppose when you've got that much fame and glory and people want to kiss every part of your body, you don't need to scream it from the rooftops. What a decent, sweet guy. Well, he was a naughty boy in his day, but weren't we all, you know? But I will always take my hat off to David Bowie.
Mick, thank you, sir.
God bless.
My pleasure.
Okay, all right, lads. Can we crack out the cocaine and let's get serious?
I want to give a special shout out to the folks at Ovation for setting up the interview with Mick. That was a wonderful opportunity to get to do that for the show. And if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button and share it with your friends. And as always, subscribe to The Art of Photography so you'll always be up to date on all the latest and greatest videos we do. Until next time, I'll see you later. Because the shouting of Happy New Year happens at midnight in your local time zone. Meanwhile, other time zones either have already celebrated the New Year or they're sitting around waiting to do it. So cities in New Zealand celebrate New Year's Day first, followed by cities in Japan, Australia, Russia, China, and India, followed by cities in Europe and Africa, followed by cities in North and South America, and then ending on islands out in the Pacific Ocean, like Hawaii and finally Samoa. There are 24 separate time zones, so there are 24 separate times when balls drop, Happy New Year gets shouted, and people engage in flagrant public displays of affection and intoxication. So let's start at the beginning. Why do we have time zones? Keep in mind that there's another way we could do this. We could have a single time that holds true all over the planet. When it's noon in Moscow, it could also be noon in London, New York, and Los Angeles. The problem is that people really don't like that. People much prefer for it to be noon when the sun reaches its peak in the sky. In order for it to be noon when the sun reaches its peak, everybody needs to set their time according to the sun. And this is how things used to be. It used to be that there were no clocks. People used things like sundials. Then there were clocks, but only the rich people could afford them because they were really expensive. So a town would have a central clock tower with bells loud enough to be heard all over town, and the clock keeper would set the clock according to the sun. This system worked well until trains started to move quickly from town to town. In order to run a punctual train schedule, all the towns needed to have a coordinated time system rather than setting their clocks loosely according to the sun's zenith. So the idea of time zones was created to help keep people from missing their trains. Today, the world has 24 time zones, with all the clocks in the same time zone displaying the same time. But it can still be confusing, especially if you're trying to schedule a phone call with someone in China or Australia. How do you make sense of this? The easiest way is to get out a globe and a table lamp. The table lamp represents the sun. Position your globe so that England is pointing toward the sun. In this model, it's now high noon in England. For historical reasons, the 0-degree longitude line runs through Greenwich, England. This is called the prime meridian, and this place on the globe is also known as GMT plus 0, or Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC plus 0, where UTC stands for Coordinated Universal Time. So look at your globe. Looking down at the North Pole, imagine the globe divided into 24 pie-shaped slices. Each slice is a time zone. It's high noon in the England time zone. From the vantage point of the North Pole, the Earth spins counterclockwise. That's why the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. In the slice immediately adjacent to England on the left, it's 1 p.m. or UTC plus 1. In the slice immediately adjacent to England on the right, it's 11 a.m. or UTC minus 1. As the Earth rotates counterclockwise, in 1 hour, it will become high noon in the slice immediately adjacent to England on the right. 5 hours after it's high noon in England, the Earth will have rotated enough for it to be high noon on the east coast of the United States. This is referred to as UTC minus 5. The central time zone of the U.S. is
south on the Pine Creek Trail from Ramsey Village. found some of my favorite fruit in these choke cherries on the trail. There's lots of them. I hope I cleaned out that choke cherry tree pretty good. There'll be a whole bunch. And then one more. And then saw. Actually, I might get struck by light. Seneca-era and Susquehannock hunting and mooring parties. The 88 footpath was once again open for quiet travel, whether hiking, bicycling, or skiing. DCNR hopes you will enjoy and protect this spectacular estate. So I am somewhere over here right now. Next weekend I will be up here, so I get around 2008 Pennsylvania State Forest and State Parks are over 2.1 million acres. Sure gorge. Original Pine Creek Channel. Smithsonian up there. 500,000 years ago, North America entered several ice ages. Thousands of years of relentless cold passed, and the ice accumulated a mile thick across Canada. The ice eventually formed glaciers that slowly advanced southward into Pennsylvania's valleys like spilled white glue. One glacier crept into what would become Tioga County, PA, and caused an abrupt change. It rocked the original easterly flow of Pine Creek, dammed it up, and forced it to spill over into the mountain gap near Ansonia. Around 15,000 years ago, the climate warmed and the glacier melted. Pine Creek, fed by melting ice, carved a deep new channel gorge, now known as the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon. It would never again flow east to the Tioga River. An incredible diversion had occurred, creating a scenic valley that serves as the incredible recreational diversion for us. think if I hold my camera outside of the protective case, I can get somewhat better video quality. Region of central Pennsylvania. Getting close to State Route 220, which is a future Interstate 99 corridor. Currently, Interstate 99 doesn't really go north of I-80. Harder to make movies this way, but I think the quality will be far better than what I've been getting. This video is being made with a GoPro 4 Silver at 2.7K, wide angle, 30 frames per second. This bike. What do you do? There you go. North of Happy Valley. Cleavage and fill. Yeah, looks like a concretion in there. Trees there, nice white birches. Looks like birches, they could be aspens. They're not really papery, just like pretty trees. Let me know everything is alright. Something makes me feel fine. Got a nice example of a syncline right there. Jersey Shore now. And where we are, it's only about halfway to the real Jersey Shore. Like a not quite as nice version of the Wall Highlands hiking trail bridge. Soon Interstate 99 will go all the way to Williamsport and connect with 180 near Hughesville. Come with me as we check out the town of Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania. August 14th, 2016. Hopple Drive. Maybe the trail goes just a little more. Yesterday. I do want to make it up to McConnell's store. It's north of Waterville, I think, and get some ice cream. The people there are so nice. Probably do a time lapse all the way until I get there once I turn around. go down and descend into the town of Jersey Shore here. This is totally new. This is pretty exploring new rural trails. It's just a little bit. It's gonna feel like I slipped back into the early 1980s or something. It's very quaint. Beer distributor. I'd like to go in there and ask for a case of pop. They probably won't know what I'm talking about. If you're enjoying the little tour of Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania. The trail goes any further than Main Street, so I'm now going to begin a time lapse that's going to go all the way hopefully to McConnell's Country Store, probably about 20 miles north on the trail. Hope you enjoy it. It'll be quiet and about 20 times the normal speed. Alright, so I made it from Jersey Shore to Waterville. The distance wasn't 20 miles as I thought. It was more like 11 and a half to 12 miles. The country store that is here is not the one I was thinking of. I forgot the Canyon Man stuff took place way further north. The one I went to for that was actually in Blackwell. I'm not going to go that far today, so I'll stop at the one that's here. Growing here. As you can see, they're not even close to ready. The ones back where we are kind of getting ready now. This is Waterville, Pennsylvania, where the not far from where the Eastern States 100 race and the Wilds Mountain Marathon took place. So that's long over now. Here's a country store and a gas station selling overpriced gas. Store. I got some sharp cheddar cheese, Stewart's orange, some water. Here is a map that they give out for free. There's Jersey Shore, there's where I was. The time-lapse video that I did before goes all the way to Waterville Village. This is McConnell's country store. I'm not really sure what the country store is up here, but that's where I was for the East, or the Canyon Man. And that kind of encompassed everything up in this area. This race is down in the southern area here. That leaves all this area here to be explored. This is Waterville, Pennsylvania. grapes are not the same as the ones that grow in western Pennsylvania. These grapes are smaller and they're extremely sour.
Number one, there's Motorola's new Atrix smartphone with an extremely fast processor. So what if you make a smartphone so powerful that it's nearly as powerful as a laptop computer? It has this fast dual-core processor, plenty of RAM, a graphics accelerator, and a flash hard drive. What it lacks to be a laptop or a netbook is a screen that's a decent size and a full-size keyboard. The Motorola Atrix recognizes this problem and offers a clamshell keyboard and display for the Atrix. So you take the phone and you plug it into the back of this clamshell, and the Atrix phone provides the guts of the laptop. It drives the display and responds to the keyboard. On the clamshell display, you can pull up a full-size Firefox browser, and the phone lets you connect into the internet and use it just like you would any browser. The clamshell has its own battery, and it can also charge the phone's battery at the same time. Obviously, this just scratches the surface of what was displayed at CES in 2011. CES is an immense show covering more than 1 million square feet of show floor space. It takes days to just walk through and see all this stuff. If you want to see more, you can come to blogs.howstuffworks.com, where I assembled a group of 40 different videos of 40 different products so that you can kind of have a virtual CES experience.
For more on this and thousands of other topics, visit howstuffworks.com. And don't forget to check out the Brainstuff blog on the howstuffworks.com homepage. You can also follow Brainstuff on Facebook or Twitter at BrainstuffHSW. The HowStuffWorks iPhone app has arrived. Download it today on iTunes. Welcome to Brainstuff from howstuffworks.com, where smart happens.
Hi, I'm Marshall Brain with today's question. How is it possible to drive across Antarctica, given that it's thousands of miles and there's not a single gas station along the way? Once upon a time, like about 100 years ago, getting to the South Pole in deepest Antarctica was hard. Very, very hard. An expedition in 1907 failed to reach the South Pole. It was finally reached in 1911, and it was an incredibly daunting project. Fast forward to 2010. In the same way that Mount Everest was once unconquerable, but is now nearly a tourist attraction and has cell phone coverage all the way to the top, Antarctica is now being traversed in Toyota pickup trucks. It's still a bit arduous, yes, but it would appear that anyone with enough money can make it to the South Pole as part of a vacation package. How do you do it? You ride in highly modified trucks and you carry the hundreds of gallons of fuel that you need in a trailer that you tow behind the truck. In 2010, a convoy of these Toyota trucks drove nearly 3,000 miles to reach the South Pole and then come back. Now, it used to be that if you wanted to drive around the South Pole, you did it in highly customized, super expensive tracked vehicles that took years to develop. How are they able to do it in a normal pickup truck? The main modification that they've made is they've taken diesel engines in these trucks and they've converted them to run on jet fuel. The reason for the jet fuel is because jet fuel is formulated to work at low temperatures anyway. When jets are flying at 32,000 feet, it's minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit up there, so the fuel has to be able to flow at very low temperatures. So by modifying the trucks to run on jet fuel, they get rid of the problem with diesel fuel turning to jelly in cold temperatures. They make some other modifications as well. For example, they put 38-inch tires. Think about a tire that's over a yard in diameter and very wide on these trucks, and they run them at low pressure so that they don't sink into the snow and ice of Antarctica. They also put rails on the truck in case it falls into a crevasse, and they have a mountable crane so that they can take the tanks of fuel. They bring the fuel in normal steel barrels. They have to be able to lift those off the trailer and move them into position so that they can do refueling. So they have a portable crane that mounts on the front of the truck to help them do that. Obviously, they also beef up the heating system, do some work on the suspension, reduce the cooling capacity, things like that, so that it can adapt to the extremely cold temperatures. And then, when they stop, they just leave the engines running so that they don't have to start them at minus 40 degrees. The company that did the modifications is called Arctic Trucks, and if you go to arctictrucks.com, you can see the kinds of modifications they're making and some of their future thinking in the Arctic and Antarctic truck realm.
For more on this and thousands of other topics, visit howstuffworks.com. And don't forget to check out the Brainstuff blog on the howstuffworks.com homepage. You can also follow Brainstuff on Facebook or Twitter at BrainstuffHSW. The HowStuffWorks iPhone app has arrived. Download it today on iTunes. Welcome to Brainstuff from howstuffworks.com, where smart happens.
Hi, I'm Marshall Brain with today's question. When did it get so complicated to pick a movie theater, and what is next in the world of movie theater picking? A friend of mine invited me to go to a movie with him this weekend. That sounds simple enough, doesn't it? And in the past it was simple. It used to be that you went down to the theater and you watched the movie. In the movie Back to the Future, you can see that world. That's a 1955 representation, and in that movie there is one movie theater in town and one movie playing at that movie theater. In the case of Back to the Future, the movie is Ronald Reagan's Cattle Queen of Montana. So that idea, one theater in town, one movie playing, that's the movie you see, so it couldn't be simpler. Now let's look at how things have morphed since then in the United States. In the early 1960s, the idea of a two-screen theater took hold, so at least you had a little bit of choice when you went down to the theater. Then, during the 1970s, the idea of a multiplex exploded. The number of screens per theater mushroomed into the teens and then the 20s. By the 1990s, a single theater with 30 screens had been built. Then came things like Dolby and THX sound systems. If you wanted the best experience, you would only go to a certified theater. Then came stadium seating. You get a better view with the seats in a stadium configuration.